Welcome to the Unplugged podcast, brought to you by the team at Under the Mango Tree.
And I think we're on. Welcome to another session of Under the Mango Tree podcast. My name is Manmeet. I'm your host for today. We're joined by Ankita and Roli. Ankita's from our shopping team. Roli is part of the Geo team. Welcome to both of you. Today's topic, as we've discussed, we want to talk a lot about your journey into yoga, everything about yoga and your practices. And this is also the first time that we're doing this in person. So one of the first podcasts in person, live in Gurgaon. And at the same time, we've got two panelists instead of one. So this is a unique format. We're willing to try it out. A bit of setting is a bit different, but I'm hoping that we'll have a nice conversation in the next half an hour or so.
And whoever hasn't seen Manmeet, do you want to turn around and just say hi to the audience?
Hi, everyone. You'll see a lot of my back. This is how we're shooting it today. Perfect. Why don't we start with just like very brief introductions of what yoga is for you? Because everyone has their own definitions, their connections with yoga and their practice. So maybe, Roli, why don't we start with you on how did you get into yoga? What was your journey like?
So yoga happened to me quite late in life, even though the city that I was born and brought up in is right next to the yoga capital of the world. But I found yoga only after I moved to Singapore in 2009.
Wow. Okay.
And I always wanted to do it. But I think what changed for me in Singapore was it just was more accessible. So there were nice studios spread around the island with a whole lot of classes that gave me that flexibility to just walk into a studio when I wanted and pick from like a variety of classes and teachers. I remember actually signing up for a studio very early, almost as soon as I moved to Singapore. It's a different thing that I was paying them a lot of money and not going to the studio for maybe a year or year and a half, and then I got serious.
Oh, lovely. Do you remember your first few classes? Like, were you hooked instantly, or did it take time to kind of,
I think I was hooked instantly.
Oh, okay.
However, I was not as consistent or disciplined. So I would go, a couple of times in a week, or maybe like once a week, twice a week.
Sure.
And then travel would happen and, I wouldn't go for weeks.
Right.
But then at some point, what had started happening was the more I did it, the more I felt calmer, and mentally, I think better, like more centered.
Sure.
And that led to me going there like more often.
Nice. And it also led to like your teacher training courses, etc. Yoga teacher training. Is that
Yes.
That was like within the first few years, or?
Actually, now that you ask me, I probably became serious about my practice in the 2011 timeframe. And my yoga teacher training only happened in 2017. So it took me 5-6 years of building a practice.
Right.
I was already like very sure somewhere like midway through that time that I wanted to deepen my practice.
Of course.
By this time, I was doing a lot of reading. So I had read the Yoga Sutra, I had read the Gita, and I was reading like anything and everything that you could find in yoga. So yeah, I think, that was almost like another step in that journey.
Lovely. Nice. More on the resources later. I'd love to know more. But Ankita, probably with you, what was your journey like? How did you get into it?
So I started with the practices because of my work. So I think 2013 when I first started working, that tells you how young I am. So 2013 when I started working, with work came stress. With stress came, the need to find comfort in something that I could connect with. It can't always be people. It couldn't always be people in my life. So what I resorted to is an hour to myself, and hence came yoga.
All right.
So it was an early morning class. It was Bangalore, such amazing weather.
Yeah.
I just went to breathe fresh air and learn something on the way.
Nice.
That's how it started. And then the only time that I took a break was when I was pregnant. I had to be on the bed rest, and I wasn't allowed to do anything.
Well,
And that year plus I used to miss yoga so much. Not because I had done it for so many years, but
right.
by the virtue of being disciplined with it, I was good at it.
Yeah.
So I really missed that part of, having an hour to something which I'm good at, being a part of my routine and my daily regime. So that is something that I missed. But then I got back to it, and it's still a part of my life.
Wow, interesting. Glad that you mentioned about the work and yoga starting simultaneously in a way for you, because the first time I met you, actually, a long story, the offshoot, was at the yoga studio in Signature Beach.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we were in different teams. We go long back. I was in LCS, you were in a different team. And I joined Google, and then they had these yoga classes, and I thought, all right, I've never done yoga. Maybe this is opportunity to just do it while you're at work. And I entered this class. There was Manish, actually, I remember. There was her. There were a couple of people who are part of the KNIP team now. And she was just belting it, headstands and this and that. And I was like, oh, all right, I'm probably in the wrong class for sure. But I remember that. And then obviously this was 2016, 17, something like that. But, thanks to you, I actually got motivated in a way to kind of just do more piece by piece. But yeah.
Perfect. Very good to hear. I hope you're still doing it. If you're not, get back to it.
I am not, but that's why I think this podcast will be very helpful, not only to me, but even to others. Yeah. Which also brings us to what I really want to discuss today, which is the meat of the story is you are in a way, quote unquote, experts in this field. I mean, you've done it for a number of years. You've gone through a lot of resources. Some have been successful, some not so successful. So I think the idea for this podcast also for us, me and obviously all the other viewers, is to learn and understand from you on some top tips and tricks, etc. So before we get into this, would love to know, how are you doing it right now? We're in the same sort of work-life balance, more or less, some more, some less. How do you take the time out to do this, or what are you exactly doing? Do you do how do you schedule your classes, for example? Yeah. Would love to know. Maybe Ankita, with you first.
Absolutely. So obviously, we might not all of us be in the same work-life balance situation, but it's important to me to take time wherever I can. Sure. And I'm a mom to two, a pet and a human. So just making sure that, and as cliched as it might sound, but I truly believe that if I am at my best, I can be of best service to them. Sure. And I stand by that. Even when I have to cruelly leave my child with some support at home and go out to practice, I come back in a 2x more energetic zone and more into that situation with my child when I come back. So that inspires me to continue to be on that journey.
Absolutely. And
earlier I was doing yoga continuously, and then post-pregnancy I started moving into more of strength training and muscle building.
Sure.
So I've also practiced a lot of aerial yoga. So that so yoga to a layman may sound to be a little bit boring, more meditative, a lot more calming than energizing. But because I had been doing it for so long, so I also wanted to try something new. That led me to aerial yoga, and it was just love at first sight, if I may say that. And I then continued to do it for about 2.5 years, and then from there graduated onto Pilates. So that has been my workout journey. But if I can, I think even with Pilates, I think I stayed true to taking an hour for myself, which brings me back into my home zone as my true self. So that's something that I try and be regular with.
Lovely. Are these in-person, I'm assuming in-person classes versus on? Have you taken any online classes? I'm just trying to understand for someone who is not able to find either the time or the resource and needs more flexibility, do they work? Have you tried them?
No, absolutely. So throughout COVID, it was all online any which way.
Right.
And the good part about yoga and finding the right teachers is that they pace it well with you.
Okay.
So if you're an absolute newbie, it's a smaller class, smaller group classes.
Sure.
Obviously, it's hard for you to for them to correct your postures, but it's still doable. Like if you find the right guidance or the right teacher to work with, online is still doable. But I was in the virtual setup during COVID.
Yeah.
And then after that, I came to a personal setup again. So it's personal training for me, at least on the Pilates side, because it needs, the trainer needs to be well adept at understanding your needs.
Right.
And you need to communicate with them on a day-to-day basis throughout that hour of session. So now it's moved to more personal regime, but earlier it was always group and COVID was all virtual.
Yeah. And Roli, you, how does it continue for you right now?
So I think in my case, what over the last couple of years, what I'm trying to make peace with is that, your emotional, mental, physical needs and change, right? Year on year. And what works for you, I think, at one point of your life may not work for you the same way at another point of life.
That's true.
And I think personally for me, where I am, I'm finding that yoga definitely is a practice that, as I was saying earlier, has done a lot for me, yes, physically, but has done maybe more for me mentally and emotionally. So I think that piece of it is precious to me, and I'm trying to find time for that. However, I think where I am, I'm also like taking expert advice and inspiration. And, for the audience here, Manmeet has been a huge inspirational force who got me to a Google Gym.
Yes.
Like for the first time in 17 years, right, of being here.
I'm glad to have a gym partner is what I mean. So it just works for me.
I'm glad that, this is happening. So as you know, I've been trying to go to the gym. When I'm not traveling, I go to the gym maybe I gave myself a goal of twice a week. But when I'm here, I am going thrice and sometimes 4 times a week.
Okay.
And I'm trying to do weights and cardio there. And then there's cult,
right,
where I would go for maybe a dance class. And then because it's summer in where we are, I'm again back to learning swimming.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a lot of different things.
Right.
But that seems to be what I need and my body needs right now. I do miss having a very regular discipline of yoga in my life. So every chance that I get, I actually at home just roll out my mat. I go to YouTube,
right,
and I play a class.
Got it.
That's also, by the way, how I built my home practice leading up to the yoga teacher training.
Got it.
I mean, that was religious thing that I would do every day. So even if it were 10 minutes,
right,
my lead up to the yoga teacher training was, even if it were 10 minutes, I would roll out my mat and just practice, some asanas. And I think that did a lot. I'm not doing that as much, but every chance I get.
Yeah, that's actually very good advice.
That's super important as well.
Yeah.
At times it's not about, finding 60 minutes, but just 15 minutes to stay connected to yourself and just stay disciplined. I think, at times whenever I have myself not gotten time because of travel, because of things at home, etc., just finding 10 minutes of mindful breathing has also helped me stay connected to the feeling that I get after a complete yoga class. It brings you back to your core, it centers you, and then it makes you feel that, okay, there's much more happening, and just zooming out gives you the calmness. So
actually, I want to say something, which is something that not a lot of people know about yoga. But so what we know is that, if you move and if you exercise, you have physical benefits, right?
Sure.
But if you follow like the science behind yoga, you will learn that each category of asana has a mental and emotional effect on you, right?
Oh, break it down for me a bit. Sorry. Each category of asana, what is that like?
So there are 5 categories.
Oh, okay.
Right. That any you can like literally break down yoga into. So one category is a forward fold.
Okay.
So forward fold is any pose which basically helps you bend waist down.
Got it.
Right. Now you can do that standing.
Right.
You can do that sitting. Right. So there are different ways of using that as a technique. What that category of pose does is it helps you get calmer, build more stability,
got it.
Become cooler, like literally, right? You cool down, your body temperature cools down, and this is gross, but helps with elimination, both physical and mental, right? So that's something that's not known to the point that she's making, right? Finding that 10 minutes of time, and if you have the interest, trying to find what works for you, where you are. Like if you're going through a period of lot of stress, right? Like a lot of travel, overstimulated. Maybe you shouldn't actually be like doing a practice which stimulates you even more. Maybe in that moment, what you need is something which slows you down, right? Which helps you center. So I personally wish there was like more in terms of classes and teachers available that could help us with this. Yeah.
That's a lovely point, actually. I learned that when I was learning how to swim, to be honest. So my coach was very clear. He said, I learned very late. It was about a year and a half back when I started to learn, and I had a fear of water. So what he said was, if it's a 1 hour class and you take it on Monday but don't do it for the next 3 days, that's actually less beneficial than you just take like a half an hour or 15-minute, 20-minute class, but do it every day or at least 4 or 5 times in a week, so that it's in your, and it's also to do with your mental. It's like there's a habit, and then also like I'm assuming there's like a dopamine sort of, or there's one sort of a, like there's a checkbox which is done, and you reward yourself in a way of being disciplined that way. So I love that aspect for sure, and I think I totally agree with you. And to your point about all these categories, that's one thing, by the way, and personally it kind of confuses me sometimes. Yoga is one word, but it has so many categories as one, but so many forms, so many practices. There is so many schools probably, actually, so Yogananda, Hatha Yoga, Power Yoga. How do you break it down for someone who's just getting in now and says, what, I want like a blueprint of, where to start from. Give me like a cheat code essentially of, let's say Manmeet has never done any yoga ever, or maybe has done a bit, but wants to start something meaningful. How would you want to break it down for me? Let's say, top tip, start with X, start with Y, like, any directions would be just useful. I'm sure it's like different for different people probably, but someone like me or someone who's just wants to get in, a lot of our viewers might just be that. What would you recommend? Sorry if I don't want to put you on a spot, but
even if you do, we'll say what we can.
Fair.
So, like Ankita start.
Yes.
I don't know the science behind it. We'll best ask the teacher.
Fair enough.
But what I do know is the 3 broad concepts of yoga.
Okay.
So the first one being Hatha Yoga.
Right.
So the 3 commonly known forms of yoga.
Sure.
Hatha Yoga is all about mindfulness in the layman's term. It's the slowest form of yoga that connects you to every posture that you're doing to your breath. So it gives you mindful practice with every posture that you're doing, and it spaces out the number of postures that you do in an hour as well. So it's slow. Then second part is Vinyasa, that is more about connecting mind, body, and breath.
Okay.
So although the postures are a little faster, better paced than Hatha Yoga, but you do stay in for some seconds in the same posture where you're able to say direct your breath towards a certain body part and energize a certain body part, and then you move ahead. So it's a very clear establishment of the connection between your chakras as well. And then the third part is the Ashtanga Yoga, which is Ashtanga Yoga, which is all about activity. So it is more. It is all about building muscle strength, strength training. So breaking the myth again, yoga is not all putting your hands like this and sitting and doing something and getting out of it. So there's this form of yoga that totally focuses on muscle training and strength building. So you have a little more complex nature of postures, and then you stay in them so that your body is able to learn that, your muscle atrophy changes and you're able to stay in that pose for longer and build strength in it. So that's how I learned the forms of yoga and found my comfort. But we better learn from it as well.
I'm no
What's
teacher.
the science behind it, Roli?
I'm no teacher. So I think this is a very interesting topic, Manmeet, and it sometimes, I will admit, triggers me because there is so much of misinformation available, right, on yoga. And to be honest, we could sit here for hours and debate, because everything that you would have heard about yoga, there is a completely different theory and point of view that's available. So I almost feel like, it's a topic that requires more time. But what I will say is, if you come down to basics, right, at a very simple level, right, yoga was created not because somebody wanted to teach you these beautiful and really hard gymnastics, right? But the goal really was to help you, and that's the crown jewel. If you were to read the text is you do yoga so you can build a strong body and a strong mind. So eventually you can sit in dhyan, right? You can meditate, and you can do everything else that follows from there. That's going to become too deep, so we won't go there. But it's imagine you want to meditate, but you have, a pain in your back, right? Or your knees are not, holding you up, right? Or you've got cervical, or you've got some issue. So the whole point was to build a strong body and a strong mind, so you could sit and calm, right? Now, how you build a strong body and how you build a strong mind, there are, different schools and different philosophies that have found their ways, which they think are the right ways to get you there, right? Just like you would for anything else in life, what I would say is you try a few clothes and you see what looks good on you and what you feel comfortable in, right? And maybe along the way you do a little bit of research to see, is that actually working for you, right? And you make your choice that way.
So that's a good analogy, actually.
So there's no flow. We start here and we end there. There's no one size fits all. It's different forms, different practices, although the word is yoga, but it's literally a yoga of different things that you can do. Plus one to what Roli said. I think you have to try something, start somewhere, be disciplined and routine oriented about it, and then you find where your comfort lies. So.
Absolutely.
If I may say, one myth that I think is worth busting is this thing of, and we hear it so often, right, is I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga, right?
Oh yeah, I was about to say that actually. But sorry, it's not a myth, is what you're saying, of course.
I think that's the reason why, right?
Okay, sorry, the other way.
It's almost what she's saying, right? It's find some little opening, right? If you have a class being offered at work,
yes, of course.
I mean, that's the simplest way to go and try it. If you don't like it, don't go.
True.
Or maybe find another class, right? But I think the key is to try it. And even if you feel you're the most inflexible person, go. I
mean, it's also incremental gains, right? I mean, that's what I've seen, at least with like with my practice, for example, I actually started a lot during lockdown as well. My uncle is actually a yoga instructor in Sydney, and he started doing online classes, and I was the guinea pig essentially. So he'll do it on me, saying, "Are you following? Are you able to understand?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I can." What I realized during that time, and this was almost like a solid 3-4 months of continuous practice with him, was that not that I became the most flexible person, but I could see that difference in myself, small, but it incremental at least. So I do agree with the point of, just put in a little reference, see. And for me, measuring is also important at times. I want to measure, this is what my input is, what do I get out of it, etc. So yeah, for me, I think there are these 3 pillars of fitness I always want to check for myself. One is cardio, which is, swimming, etc. Strength and flexibility. I think I'm semi on 2. I'm very little on 3. So thank you so much for at least.
I think we should turn the table, right?
We should.
It is.
We should, but can I just say,
Yes, please.
for the competitive spirit in you,
Yeah.
actually, today's yoga world has a lot to offer.
Right.
If you look, you'll find lots of challenges.
Totally.
Oh, actually, I didn't know. I absolutely don't know about it. Yoga challenge, like poses?
Also, there'll be some days, then there'll be what you are really good at, hold your plank.
Planks.
Or,
okay, all right.
Or do 108 Surya Namaskars.
You can actually start there. So whoever is into surength and stuff
Right.
like that, and just connecting it to something called yoga. Could be doing Surya Namaskars could be a good start.
I never actually
you to be flexible.
Correct, and I've never thought of that actually.
And it's a
Let's gamify it
repetitive
in a way.
movement.
Sorry,
It's
yeah,
a
correct.
repetitive movement.
Correct.
It's adjacent to what you're doing.
Right.
So
A challenge out there for everyone.
Food for thought as well. Yes. And which also brings me to one thing which I was very curious, and thanks for bringing that point about how classes are available and it's easy, at least sometimes at work. What are the resources that you've explored in Google already, or would you be able to tell us about? It's easy for us to just kind of then pick those and groups at Google, yoga classes. What all have you explored? What all is there?
So I took the yoga class in the Google Gurgaon office.
Right.
Pre-COVID, and then I continued for some months after COVID as well.
Right.
And you would be amazed to know that the yoga instructor who was coming here is one of the very good paid instructors in a very big school of yoga called Sivananda School of Yoga. So it is,
who is
all
that?
The person,
teacher.
There's the same teacher we have.
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes.
He's really good though.
Well-known Sivananda yoga instructor.
Oh yes.
So
Very good.
we will be you'll be amazed to see the level of quality of trainers that we have at Google. So exactly what you said, Roli, if you are to start here.
Yeah.
Because there's quality available here, there's good amount of personal attention.
Correct.
They really care about your well-being. So it's not a rushed class at all. So start slow, start with the easy access ones, and then during COVID I also found 2 YouTube channels.
Okay.
Yoga with Adrian and Yoga with Cassandra. So whenever I'm at home, love those ladies.
Yes.
Love the work that you do. The amazing. And they have for beginners, for intermediates. They have across school of practices as well.
Got it.
So it's super cool. So that's where I found my way, and still try to hang on to wherever I can.
That's good. We'll add the links in the description of the video for sure. But thank you so much for that. That is helpful.
I haven't explored yoga in office. I actually learned something new, Ankita. Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't know Shivananda is doing classes here. So I love Shivananda as well. They have a really good center in Gurgaon. And I also follow their YouTube channel. So they have lots of classes, right? It's that thing of, if I'm feeling lazy to go to a studio and I just want to be home, I literally YouTube is my, hey, YouTube people, send me some track. But that's what I do, right? I put a class on YouTube and I just practice. It's interesting you said yoga with Adrian, because I give her a lot of credit for my home practice in the early years. That woman is amazing.
Oh, okay.
And if you go explore like her channel,
Right.
she's also a really good case study of like an influencer who used a platform really well. So she's organized her classes by time, by condition.
Oh, wow.
And when I say condition, you'll find a class for yoga for when you're sick, yoga for when you're lazy, yoga for when you're going through a breakup, right?
That's also me.
All
By time as well.
Fair enough.
And of course, right, like by
Right.
time. So if you want to do 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you'll find like 10 minutes on like yoga with Adrian. So I would highly recommend her too.
And we didn't get paid by
That's
Adrian
right.
to say that.
But
we
we
just
could-
like,
We should now.
We could get
But we
paid,
could get
you know, if you send this to Adrian. So
All right. This is this has been so informative, to be honest. Really want to say thank you for obviously you taking time for this podcast and sharing so much information and resources.
absolutely.
we enjoyed it. I think we have fun.
Happy to.
Thank you for all your effort.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for
Get
having us here.
together.
Absolutely. And the traditional form of yoga. Namaste.
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 Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Unplugged podcast. Brought to you by the team at Under the Mango Tree. See you next time.